there, this is Wafa Al-Abidat. You're listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Nouf Hakeem is a humanistic speaker and teacher in the fields of creative response therapy, grief recovery, self-development and self-awareness. Through her various online platforms, as well as regular workshops and events, Nouf's work is based in both Jeddah and Dubai and other cities in between. A serial entrepreneur from the age of 21, Nouf initiated successful businesses in the fields of fashion through Sutra and Hal Inc., creative recovery, interior furnishings, job networking, platforms through the platform Balain, and online education through Inner Light. Welcome, Nouf. So COVID, how have you been?
Strange times. Very strange times. It's very unsettling. It's a confusing time and so many uncertainties. And I keep telling myself that a quote that I read once is that when nothing is certain, everything is possible. And that's the only thing that keeps me going. So it was difficult. I'm not going to say it was a piece of cake. It was difficult.
When I listen to your podcasts, you always are referencing a book and I'm like, God, how much does this girl read? So I'm always like writing the names down. So I read and discovered Cal Newport because of you. And you mention him a lot as well through your posts. And digital minimalism and deep work changed my life. Right. And I bought it for my dad. I bought it for my husband. They haven't read it, but I just feel like, oh my, this is so true. Like, and once you're aware of the main message, I think he repeats himself a lot throughout the book, but I think he drills that message in. And then also when I listen to you and you kind of reemphasize your key takeaways, it really resonated with me. So now I don't have social media detoxes. I'm not that strong yet, but I do leave my phone down and I'm very conscious of the time that I spend in this black void of nothingness. Like it just sucks me in. So I wanted to ask, how much do you read in a week or in a month?
It's interesting that you say that. This is what comes across. I feel that I don't read enough. And I don't know if it's my perfectionist side, but I genuinely feel that I don't read enough. So how many books I read in a month? Maybe a book, one book or less sometimes. So audiobooks, I mean, they changed my life because I'm able to listen to an audiobook in the car while I'm on the go, and I can go through the books quickly as opposed to having to sit and read a book. So I would say maybe a book takes me a month to 6 weeks on average to finish. And I prefer audiobooks over paper books. I have some paper books next to the bed because before I fall asleep, I don't like to listen to anything. I would just pick up a book and read it. Sometimes I would go into this nerd mode where I'm reading I have a paper version of the book that I'm listening to where I highlight, but I'm in a different chapter on the book because I don't go as fast with my with the paper book.
I do that for hard books that I'm reading that I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. So I buy it on Audible and then I buy the hardback version, like things like Good to Great and Blue Ocean Strategy and I just have them. So I'm like, if the mood strikes, I can, finish bits and pieces from both. I wanted to segue into Sitra and your first, I'm guessing this is your first experience, like through my research, this was your first experience starting a business. Do you want to tell us a bit about Sutra and, just kind of going back to Sutra and then how it moved on to Hal Inc. and what was that experience like with you in fashion?
There was actually another project before Sutra. When I was 19, my sister Nada, my aunt Mahasan, and our friend Khadija Al-Attas, we started an art center. It was called Tashakil, where we used to teach art to kids and to adults. And it was a sweet experience. It lasted for about 9 months or so, but then it was very difficult to keep running. And management-wise wasn't working so well. And then we all kind of lost interest and then the project stopped. But then Sutra was my first real entrepreneurial project. I started it when I was 21. And a friend of mine, I asked a friend of mine to become my partner. Her name was Yasmin. She was my neighbor. And I asked her to help me out with the management and finance aspect of things. I was doing all of the creative and the sales. And then after the first 2 seasons, I felt like this is not working for us as a joint thing. And we had a conversation, and then we both decided that I can do this on my own. And I did it on my own for a few years. And it was very exhilarating to start something from scratch. I mean, it started from the dining room of my tiny apartment. And it literally was, I really like this top that I bought, I think, from the Maldives, from the gift shop. And I really want more of it. And I couldn't find anything similar to it. And so I went and bought some fabrics and went up to one of the tailors in Khalidiyya district in Jeddah. And I said, can you make me something similar to this? And he said, do you want it exactly the same? And I remember standing there in the shop and I said, no, not exactly the same. Can I have a paper? And I did small modifications and changes. And then he made the first one, and it was like magic to me, seeing something transform. And the one I made was even better than the one I had as a sample. And this is how it started. So creating clothes for myself, where people were asking, where did you get this from? I really like what you're wearing. And then started to do it for people.
And then did you start it on Instagram? What happened before you opened the shop?
It was mainly in my house. I did small collections of 60 pieces and then took photos of those. And then I was modeling, my friends were modeling to take photos of these clothes. And then we did an event where I messaged people to come to this kind of a pop-up experience, and it was at home. So we did events, we participated in events in retail shows, bazaar. So this was mainly it. So doing an event, and I would sell out. So I would create, it started with tunics. So I would create 50 to 60 tunics, do a 2 or 3 day event and sell out. And then go do the same thing again. So this was the process.
How did you meet your second partner, and then how did that help elevate your brand forward?
3 years down the line, my friend at the time, Maryam bin Mahfouz, was very interested in the brand and she loved it so much. She was very supportive and she was helping out with different aspects. She had some experience with tailoring. Besides her branding and strategy knowledge, she was also helping me out with production, with ideas. For a whole year, she was just supportive of the brand. And she was studying graphic design, and she did this uplift or rebrand for Sutra as one of her final projects for one of the courses. And what's interesting was that her teacher during that course was the person who created Sutra's first logo. He was my husband's friend at the time, and he did it as a favor. And when she was taking the course with him, she rebranded, which was very interesting. يعني حسيت إنه this was the first time Sutra was born to life in terms of a brand, in terms of a logo and colors, and إنه قبلها it was just a series of items that are just being made and sold. So when Maryam created the branding for Sutra, this took the brand to a next level. And I think about 3 months into that, Maryam suggested that she starts an evening line under Sutra. And she said, I can start it under the brand and let's see how it goes. And I remember during that same conversation, I recognized her genius from all the help and support that she's been doing. And I said, no, let's go in as partners 50-50, not just with the evening line. So she agreed. We took some steps towards that. And then the first decision, we said that we need to take it out of the house and into its own space. So I rented the apartment right next to me. I remember taking a loan from my husband at the time and renting the apartment next to me and not knowing what we're going to do with this. We hired our first tailor and we transformed the apartment into half showroom and half workshop. And we had a series of events there. So people would come see the collection, and again, we would sell out in 3 days.
What I love about Sutra even today, I mean, I can remember that shift in the branding where it became a brand that I feel if you were in New York, you would see Sutra and it could work. If it was in London, it was so cohesive from the branding to how things were done, to the storytelling. There was such a nice synergy between all the touch points. So for sure, all that work that you guys were doing was being seen by us and by the customer, I'm sure. So my next question is, when did you finally realize, okay, let's start doing this abaya line? And do you feel like Hal Inc. was bigger than Sutra?
The story for Hal Inc. is very interesting. We kind of were shy starting it. We weren't sure of it because, again, it was what everybody was doing. Abayas, abayas, abayas. And we didn't want to, we thought that it would ruin Sutra to start abayas under Sutra. So we both kept saying, no, we won't do abayas. And interestingly enough, both Maryam and I, whenever we bought our own abayas, we would go to local designers and ask and modify things for ourselves, simplify and make abayas more minimalist for us. And so when we wore our more minimalistic abayas, people would go to the designer and ask for what they saw on us and ask for the same modifications, which was so interesting because we kept simplifying designs and the designer wouldn't think that it looks good, but she would do it anyway because she's our friend or because she's supportive or because she just wants to sell different designers. And so we thought, why don't we create the first minimalist abaya line? We weren't sure. So we wanted to give it a fair chance and we wanted to see if the brand will stand on its own without us being in the picture. I don't know why, but at the time it seemed like a very big risk to start doing abayas. So it was Miriam's idea and I was pregnant with my daughter. I remember this was about 10 years ago. So we decided to just create a line of abayas and have them very minimalistic. And there was the biggest retail show that happens in Jeddah. It's called Basat al-Rih. We were going to take a booth for Hal Inc. And we thought of the name on the spot. And Hal means hail or cardamom. So we decided to get a booth for the abayas, have it close to Sutra, but not next to Sutra, and not stand in that booth and test out the market and see how that does. And it was an instant success. I mean, people were asking, where can we find you after the retail show? And we kept saying, it's just, we had someone there in the shop, in the pop-up, and she would say, we're just doing events. No, you can't just do events. How can I find you? How can I find you? And we weren't sure of where we're going to place this brand. And then we decided after the show that we're going to create a corner or like take the top part of Sutra's shop. We had a shop by then in a mall and give it to Hal Inc. and transform the area and start, the bigger story of the branding than tags and interior and all.
When did you feel like it was time to let go and was it hard for you?
I went through a divorce in 2015. I think around the time of the divorce, I kind of started, it was kind of a rebirth for me to figure myself out and get to know myself in different ways. I was exploring different areas of profession and different interests that I had, healing with art, meditation, energy healing, different things, different modalities. And I felt so pulled towards this mysterious world. And I kind of, as I was doing this in my personal life and going through this transformative journey and going through this life-changing experience of a divorce with kids, I felt like I was exploring different sides of me that I didn't know existed. I was turning 30 and I felt like, and at the same time, Sutra was growing to become more of a company with a head office and 2 shops and people working here and there. It was getting bigger and it was becoming more demanding, and we were doing our first fashion show in Fashion Forward Dubai, and it was going into a direction that was very far from where I was at personally. And so I ignored the first signs that were telling me that, no, maybe this was your calling at some point, but today it's not feeding your soul in a way that nourishes you. And it feels more like a heavy burden, but then I feel it's a responsibility because I'm being paid by the company to do this work, and I'm holding space where someone could be in my place and give more and do more. And what's interesting was that I put all my energy of healing and creativity and self-development into working with the team. So I kind of became that mother hen for the team, etc. And we had these weekly brunches, and we had like self-development conversations, and I realized there that this is my true calling, the teaching, the coaching aspect of things. And it wasn't an easy decision, honestly. It took a few years of battling and of struggling and of doing the work, because I have to do the work, and because I believe in the brand, and because I feel like I owe it to the business and to my business partner at the time to put more, to do more. But then I felt like it's not really incongruent with who I turned out to be or who I became at the moment. So shortly after 2015, I started realizing this. I started to talk to Miriam about it. It wasn't an easy decision. It was hard for her and for me to finally make the decision and to say, I'm selling my shares to you, and you're going to be the sole owner of this company. And I see that this is what's best for the brand. And this is something we actually spoke about 5 years before, where we decided that if anything happens to the brand or to us, we would sit and have an honest conversation of what's the best thing to do for the brand today, now. And it almost felt like, co-parenting. And at that moment, we both agreed that what's best for the brand, or I remember that this is how I felt, is for it to be with Miriam, because this is where her passion is. I'm going to say something that's a little bit vulnerable, and I've never said it before, so I'm saying it here. When I was doing these self-development meetings with the team and some, I would say, HR aspects of the business, it felt like I was useless in the business. It felt like I didn't deserve the salary that I was being paid. It felt like I'm kind of betraying the company and the brand and an aspect of myself, where I would rather do something else and be somewhere else.
This podcast is brought to you by the Women Power Summit. The Women Power Summit is an annual event that hosts more than 2,000 guests to listen, learn, and network with more than 100 plus speakers and industry leaders. The summit creates space for growth, learning, discussion, and collaboration, with the means of creating a space where women can support each other, ask questions, be curious, and be inspired. It's crazy to me that you went from fashion to wellness, because I recently interviewed Nur Tahini from the Goodness podcast, and she also went from Savoir Flair to this platform that's all about wellness and health and mental health. And from somebody who's worked in fashion, I just remember a point where we were discussing, like, the team I was working and the company I was working with at the time, we were discussing different shades of yellow. Should it be lemon yellow, sun yellow? And there was like 50 shades of yellow. And I realized this is not what I meant to do in my life. Like, there is so much more in this world. And I love fashion and I love styling and I love the industry, but also there has to be more. Like, I wanted to go deeper beyond, clothes and fabrics. And I felt I really wanted to make an impact on people's lives. And I think your story's trajectory really resonates with also hers. And it reminds me of some of the moments I've had, which is they're on very far extremes of each other, these industries.
But what's interesting is, Wafa, don't you think that there's someone else in the world who would feel very passionate discussing shades of yellow and would get kind of sometimes upset about, no, this is not the right shade? And I have that as one of the things that I'm passionate about is interior, for example. And sometimes my husband, Noor, would say, they're just the same. No, they're not. And I go crazy. It's just a crock. No, it's not just a crock. And so I understand that for some people, a certain profession or a certain project or passion fuels you, and maybe for a while and not anymore.
So is this when you started Baleine?
Oh, so I had the Lighthouse. This was about 2014. I started the Lighthouse, and then the Lighthouse overlapped with Sutra, and then I left Sutra in about maybe 2016, around 2016, 17, I don't remember precisely. And so they overlapped, and then I left Sutra. I still had the Lighthouse, and then I find myself always doing two things at the same time. So I was doing college and Sutra, and then Sutra and Hal Inc., and then Sutra, Hal Inc., and the Lighthouse. And then so I left Sutra and Hal Inc., was doing the Lighthouse for a very short period on its own. And then I started actually very close to it, like a few months afterwards, I started doing the furniture business. And the furniture business, I spoke about the story more than once, and it's so interesting. So I was in Marrakesh, and I went there for my birthday, for my my 30th. I went a solo trip to Marrakesh when I was 30. I was walking in one of the streets and I felt butterflies. And I had just gone through a divorce. So to me, these butterflies were kind of confusing. I associated butterflies with always a romantic encounter. But there wasn't anything romantic about this street. And so I had to travel the next day, and I didn't know what's there in that street. So I felt these butterflies, and I was there on my 30th. And then a year later, I went to Marrakesh again on the same month, on the same day for Ala Balkhi's wedding. And it was again my birthday. I was in Marrakesh. I was 30. It was my 31st birthday. And I said, I need to go to that street where I felt the butterflies. I need to know what's there. And now I have more understanding of the energetics of things. Like, I can't ignore this with the feeling that I had. So I planned to go. So I went by myself and I walked through that street. The butterfly feeling came again. And I realized this time that this is actually a street for vintage furniture. And I went into this random shop and I met this French lady who lives in Marrakesh and who sells furniture from the 20th century. And don't ask me why or how I bought so many home accessories, and I asked her to ship these to Saudi. And I got in the car. That was the same day I'm coming back to Jeddah. I got in the car. I texted my friend and my sister, and I said, I bought a lot of furniture, and I don't know why. I don't know. What am I buying these for? And Noor Kilani, my friend at the time, said, let's do a pop-up. And I said, yes, I love the idea. Let's do a pop-up. So I came back to Jeddah. We started planning for this pop-up. She said, do it at my place. I have an empty space. And then I said, okay, do you want to... And she said, I love what you're doing so much. Maybe I'm going to become your... يعني قالت لي أنافسك ممكن أنافسك. فقلت لها ليش تنافسين? Let's do it together. And we got excited. She did the first pop-up with me. We did it together. And we called it, What Would Josephine Do? Like, what would Jesus do? We said, what would Josephine do? And we based the idea of a pop-up that if Josephine, the wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, lived in Jeddah, what would her apartment look like? And we styled the whole space looking like what it could look like if Josephine lived here. And it was crazy. We did this event. So many people came. And this is how my interest with furniture started. And I had no prior interest. And I remember a friend of ours came to one of our pop-ups, or to the first pop-up, and he said, do you know that this chair is from the so-and-so century? And I said, no. And he said, I love the Eames chair from the 60s, from the Eames chair from mid-century. And I said, I don't know what's that. And I remember his face, like, he made a face. What? How are you in this business? But it was a genuine passion. And it kind of worked out. Wafa, I had no interest in this before.
So you were saying that even if we're good at something, it shouldn't box us in. Can you be more specific about what you mean?
Just because I was good at sourcing furniture and throwing pop-up events and doing themed events, because I was doing themed events at the time, doesn't mean that I should be doing it for the rest of my life. And it was a very interesting time, because the thing that kept me going is that the events looked so beautiful. The photos looked so great. I would sell everything. Yeah, but I was feeling very drained and very unhappy. And it could be partially because I was doing everything on my own, or because it was heavy physically, draining. Or it could be that it wasn't the right time for it. Since then, I learned to listen to my own energy. And there was a very specific moment where we were doing a pop-up in Riyadh. And my husband, I was talking about one of my friends, and I said, oh my God, this girl, she doesn't get it. She keeps repeating the same issue and she doesn't get it. I was just after a phone call, and my husband said, can I say something on that note? And I said, yeah. And it was the day of the pop-up. And he said, wouldn't you see that sometimes if you're in it, you don't actually see it? And I said, No, what do you mean? And he said, did you notice that every time you do a pop-up, you get sick? And I said, no. And he said, you are sick now? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay. And 2 months ago, yes, yes, yes. And I just saw the pattern of every time I'm doing a pop-up, I would get sick. It was very strange to see and kind of uncomfortable. And I noticed, because I was kind of like on a hamster wheel, just running with it and not thinking, am I doing money? Am I making money? Sorry. Is the company doing okay? Am I happy? Is it sustainable? How long can I do this for? I wasn't thinking of anything. I was just in the hamster wheel. And you can do that when you're an intern or a stylist at 21 and you're just, getting your career started. But you can't do that when you're, 35 and have kids. And what you just said resonated so much, because I thought to myself, oh my God, I don't want to keep doing this and hate it while doing it, because I'm not enjoying it. So the money that's coming in is not enough to sustain me to take more of a break. And again, as you were saying, I'm not selling a lot of the one item that I have. I'm just selling this one item, and it's just very draining.
I feel you're an idea factory. Every 6 months to a year, you come up with an idea, and they're good ideas, and they fill market gaps. And I think what I see now from talking to you, and seeing the work you've done, everything you touch or work with becomes successful and has the opportunity to scale. But then, does it ever get tiring? Like, oh my God, not another idea, please, no, like I can't do this anymore.
Yes, it does. So I had this idea of starting a YouTube show, and I created the branding for it. I named it, and everything is ready. I have a list of people that I want to interview. I had this planned out, and the tone of voice and who I'm going to interview and everything. And then I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm overwhelmed. I have so much on my plate. And just because I can do it, and just because I spent money on the branding, doesn't mean that I have to do it. I choose not to do it. This is something I can do and I would enjoy doing, but choose not to do. And this was, I think, the first time I ever did that, where I don't want to say I killed the idea, but I kind of paused it.
And what does success mean to you?
So my definition of success is changing more and more. Even the past 4 or 5 months were showing me clearly what success is for me, and to redefine it for myself and not think about what defines success for other people. And what you said in the beginning of the conversation about sustainability, really, it hit a chord. Because to me, today, success is having a business where I enjoy doing the work. It doesn't drain me. It fuels me. I have enough physical and mental energy to do the work required of me with joy and not feel rushed or overwhelmed, and also get financially rewarded and have passive income. And for this to fulfill my passion to do and inspire others to watch, and also fill a gap in the market too. كده 3 things, filling a gap in the market, fueling me personally and inspiring others along the way. And I would say these 3 things are apparent, for example, in Balen today and in Inner Light, my latest business, which is the online courses that I'm doing. But to be honest, I don't see this today in Once Upon a Chair. And I told myself that I'm going to give it another year of my time, where I try to do things differently than I did before, is to do an online store, is to hire more people, to delegate more, to start selling things that are not necessarily vintage, but slow industries and conscious industries and creative businesses, to collaborate with other craftsmen workers and to sell items that I can sell more of. So to have the vintage as supporting, but not the main thing. This is one of the things that I tell myself when I get an idea and I'm sure that I'm going to do it, is that I'm going to try it for a year. And I used to say I'm going to try it for a year and see how it does financially by the end of the year. But now I'm not just thinking financially. I'm also thinking energetically. How does it make me feel? Is it draining me? Is it sustainable? Is a new question.
So I have a question about the podcast, because it's not branded like everything you've done, and it doesn't have a regular schedule. So is this your place to go to again when you have an idea and you want to share it and put it out there? Because it doesn't seem as structured as everything else that you've done in the past.
I'm going to be honest. So I wanted the podcast to be mainly short episodes of me discussing an idea, for example, the idea of Mean Gal, the podcast called Mean Gal, says who, on different proverbs and changing people's ideas with just looking at them from a different perspective. But then it was Noor's suggestion to also put an audio version of my YouTube conversations on there. So to me, it is messy and it's not structured and it feels like a big mess, but I didn't want to separate both into two different podcasts, and I would rather to keep it all focused. And I didn't like it at first, but I noticed that a lot of people listen to my long conversations on podcasts and prefer that over YouTube. And so I thought, okay, then this serves a bigger purpose where people can listen to this in the car and multitask on their phone while listening to my conversation about decluttering or blah, something else. And so I said, okay, let's keep them all together. But like organization wise, no. And I tried to say I'm going to record one Mean Gal podcast a month, but it didn't work out this way. So I said, I don't want it to become something that pressures me. I want to do it when I feel inspired.
This podcast is brought to you by O'Brien Hill. O'Brien Hill is a leading communications agency focusing on public relations, event management, and marketing. It's made up of a fantastic group of creatives in the design and PR fields. The agency first came to life in 2010 as my brainchild. Our creative consulting services were in demand in the UK after our online publication Sketchbook became an overnight success. Much like a proud mama, our agency's namesake is attributed to the place of its inception, Notting Hill. It's now 10 years later and we're one of the leading communication agencies in town, and we as a team are incredibly proud to be working on this very podcast behind the scenes. Check us out on www.obienhill.com. I want to talk about Inner Light. I know it's a digital educational platform, and I feel there's an aspect to it where there's an experience, there's retreats as well. So I think the digital education coupled with the retreats is kind of the model. But how is it working with your husband on this? I mean, I see you guys working together. It's still very rare in this part of the world to see a couple duo from the Khalij being very vulnerable and raw and connecting with each other and correcting each other in front of an audience. And how has that been for you to work with your husband on the public stage?
I met Noor at the Lighthouse. He was doing sessions at the Lighthouse, doing talks at the Lighthouse. He was doing his own, and then we did joint talks in person, and the chemistry has always been very good. And whenever we did an event or a talk with audience there, again, we feel fueled by people's energies, and again, it flows. So kind of, I think flow is the word that I would go for when I talk about Inner Light. It almost everything flowed in a certain direction. I wasn't even thinking about it. And so we were trying to do, like, create a company where we actually do in-person talks and events, and it wasn't flowing in the direction we wanted. And we kept saying, okay, maybe it's a detour, maybe there's a U-turn there, maybe something else is calling us. And a few of our planned talks got cancelled for several reasons, and we were very upset. But we kept saying, okay, so this is course correction. It's one of the things that we say. And so we said it's course correction. And then we arrived at the idea, why don't we do it online? We do what we actually do online. Instead of having, let's say, 80 people in the room, we can talk to 1,000 people or 2. And we didn't know that, I mean, we'd be speaking to many more people through our platforms and through social media as well. So we decided to start Inner Light to do these mini courses. And at the same time, we also thought about this healing retreat where it's going in depth of the issues that are happening to people, because we both went through a lot of healing personally, and this is something is a passion for both of us. The growth and the self-development, we never stop working on ourselves. A big part of our relationship is that I will hold you accountable. If something is your stuff, I'm going to tell you. If I did something wrong, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but if you did something wrong, I'm going to hold you accountable and say, it's not okay. Oh, no, it's not okay. So it's a very big part of who we are, and naturally became part of what we do.
I was so surprised to hear in your interview with Ala on her podcast, Minna, which is an incredible podcast and I'm a huge fan, that you had kids and that your husband also had kids and that you were a mother and a stepmother. Because I feel that, I think I knew you were a mother, but it's your children are so absent from your content. And I'm not, there's no judgment there whatsoever, but it's something I noticed. And I want to know, is that, you know, at a time where everybody's flaunting their children on Instagram and making يعني حتى the topic of motherhood I feel is something, and I could be wrong يعني in maybe my limited research, like it's not something that you go deep into. Is there a reason for this? Is this strategic? Is it unconscious?
I used to share more when my account was more of a personal blog. I still do share a lot about motherhood. I still do. And about my experiences as a mother, not as much as before. And it's a very vulnerable area for me, and I talk about it a lot. I did a few lives on it. And I'm comfortable completely talking about my aspect of mothering. And maybe it's something in the future that I want to even address, having stepkids. But putting videos and photos of my kids on social media, although I respect what everybody is doing, I don't feel very comfortable doing that, because I feel like it's kind of taking away from their privacy. I don't want them to grow up and to be seen as, yeah, we know what you did that year. Oh, we saw you doing this. They didn't make this choice to be in the spotlight. They didn't choose to be on social media. And I'm kind of respecting the integrity of their souls by doing so.
In terms of productivity, just having this big family and having an abundance of projects you're working on. So let's say now you have Once Upon a Chair, Inner Light, and Balein that you're actively working on, plus your kids, plus your extended family. How are you with productivity? Like sometimes I'm like, maybe she needs a social media detox because there's a lot, you know, there's a lot going on. How do you manage your days? Do you have routines or are you fluid?
Part of the books that I read, كتير منها is related to parenting. So I try to stay up to date on what I can do as a mother and how I can give them the best given يعني my life. Well, I read this quote, children's biggest grief will be the unlived lives of their parents. فأنا ضحيت عشانك. I sacrificed my life because of you, for you. I didn't do this for you. I'm trying, you know. Even if the parent didn't say it, but if the parent is sad and lonely and unfulfilled at some point, the child will, in a way, feel guilty. And I'm trying to find a balance and inspire them to find a balance once they grow up as well. And so one of the things that I learned is quality over quantity, is the quality of the time we spend together. And one of like the biggest parenting advice I ever got from a therapist that I was going to, Asya Khashoggi, she said, be the parent that you wished for, consciously, I mean. And so I always wished if I had a parent who's successfully working and very fulfilled, how did I want her to spend time with me? Did I want her to spend time with me and feel guilty? No. I wanted her to be honest and say, listen, I'm tired, I miss you, I love you so much, but I'm tired, but tomorrow we can do this together. And stick to her word. Like I wanted a mother that would reason with me. And that's what I try and do with my kids. And I tend to forget about this, and then I keep coming back to it. Something that helps me is that Noor is very hands-on with his daughters and with my children as well. So we share a lot of these responsibilities at home. It's not like, oh, this is the woman's job, this is the man's job. So I would make dinner sometimes, he would make dinner other times. I also have a helper at the house who helps me with cooking and with cleaning and with arranging the house. And it feels like maybe nobody or a lot of people don't mention help, but there are a big part of my life. Ni'ma, the nanny with the kids, and Nasra, who works with me at the house. And I feel like they're a big part. Something else is that I'm also learning more and more to delegate, especially after understanding my human design, is that, okay, I am going to be this bird. I don't want to go down and become a squirrel and do things myself. Where there are so many squirrels who are the generators of the world in terms of human design, who would love to be guided and led by a bird, telling them what to do and giving them all the secrets of where to hunt for acorns. So I'm always on the hunt for the right squirrels who are, in alignment with me. And I'm so blessed to have a few of them working with me in Balein and someone new just joined Once Upon a Chair, and the person who was Diana was with me and Once Upon a Chair before. And so trying, always finding who can I depend on without suffocating and where I can pull back. But a recent thing that I did in terms of productivity, after speaking to Leanne Abdushakur, my friend, who's an organization guru, I would call, or freak, depending on how you're looking at it, is that I designed a schedule for myself. I thought that it was going to box me, because all my life my schedule was very fluid. I would wake up and do whatever I feel like doing at the time. Overwork some days and not do anything other days. And so I created a schedule for myself today. I'll show it to you later. I'll send a picture of it, where I decided each day of the week to give it for one of the businesses.
I know you do social media detoxes. Like I said, I've never had one before. It's really hard. Do you get FOMO even when you're off of it? And when you switch off social media detox, I know sometimes you say, I'm gone for 24 hours, 48 hours. Are you still picking up your phone unconsciously and remembering that you're detox and then you put it down? Or have you mastered it?
It's so interesting. I've been doing these detoxes for the last 3 years. And for the first 2 years, this used to happen actually the first year, this used to happen to me, where my hand unconsciously opens the app. And I think it's a muscle. I'm discovering that it's a muscle, and I'm taking it as I go. But now, during the weekends, when I'm detoxing, I don't even try and open the app. I actually feel relieved by being in a detox. Zero FOMO. And it's so interesting to me. I feel like this needs to be studied. Like, how do I go from having FOMO when I'm on it during the week, if I didn't check, for example, if I was busy, to being relieved of it during the weekend because I'm detoxing? And it took a lot of training. And in the beginning, I had to delete the app from my phone if I'm gone for more than 2 days. So I had to delete. And even now, when I do a long detox of a week or more, I delete the app, because I don't want it there as a visual reminder. So one of the things that I came across in one of the digital minimalism books is that when the phone is in front of you, physically you can see it on the table, your brain exerts power not to pick it up. We say the word tempting and we take it lightly. It is tempting. So you're looking at the phone, or you're ignoring the phone, and you're looking at your food, but your phone is looking at you in a way. So to a part of your brain, this phone is looking at you, waiting to be picked up, like a baby. And so I want you to notice the next time you go to a restaurant or you're in a meeting and you keep your phone in the bag, you will have less of an urge to look at it.
As my final question, we see you online and you are very serious. And actually, my first thought was, which is horrible when I saw you, it's communicated as, she's so serious, and it's, why can't she smile? And then I that's horrible, because there are days when I don't put any makeup on my face and people, "Inti ta'bana," like, you look sick, and I just don't have makeup on. There's so much expectations, to be smiling and to, so yeah, like, Nouf just doesn't smile sometimes, and that's okay. I had this whole inner dialogue, and I just want to, even in your interview with your sister, which I saw, you were both trying not to smile in the first 5 minutes. You wanted to just, now I see you, your body language, your energy is so relaxed, but when I see you on your platforms, you're very poised and firm. So my question is, which one is the real Nouf, or are they all like different facets of you?
I feel it depends on the conversation and the context. They are all different. There are, yes, all different facets and aspects of myself, and I embrace them all. So if I'm on a stage or in front of people and I'm alone, I'm going to be talking in a certain way. But if I'm talking with my husband, then my energy completely shifts into a more feminine role. So if I'm alone, then I'm more into my masculine. I'm holding the space. I'm organizing the conversation. But then if he's there, I allow him to lead. And then I can, be playful and be easygoing a bit. And then if I'm now with you talking, I know that this conversation is only audio. I can see you on the camera, but I know this is not recorded. So I'm completely relaxed physically. And then, so it depends on the context for me, honestly. And sometimes, because of what we see on social media, a lot of it is staged, and a lot of what we see is scripted and staged and planned. It's confusing, and I want to say it's poisonous to the eye to see a lot of scripted content and a lot of staged family videos and, love and a lot of cuddling. And maybe it's genuine for some people, but because there's a lot of scripted and staged and forced content, it killed it to me. It feels, and it kind of almost became the norm that if you're not putting makeup, Wafa, there's something wrong. If you're not smiling and jolly, then there might be, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Is everything okay? Yes, everything is okay. People in the normal world are not always smiling. We learn to smile because of social media. And I think one of the videos, I don't know if you've seen it, I said that being on social media is like that photo, the family portrait that people used to take once a year, where everybody is on their best behavior, best dressed, like well-dressed, best behavior, smiling and sitting and, poised. And then this is what's expected of us every day on social media. But it's one day a year. It used to happen once a year. The bar is really high. And when people tell me, why don't you smile on your story? I said, there's nothing to be smiling about. So if I remember my son when he was 1, and I remember that he's so sweet, maybe I'll smile. But if I'm talking about, I don't know, enmeshment between a man and his mother, I don't need to be smiling.
Nouf, this has been phenomenal. I really need to thank you, because you living your authentic self and you being vulnerable and you trying again and failing and trying something new and asking questions, it inspires people like me. You're a guiding light for so many people, and I think I love watching you learn along your journey. Like, I feel like you're just this work in progress, and it's just really powerful. So I thank you just for being you and getting closer to you every day, and I'm a huge fan, and I'm so excited to have people listen to this and see or understand not just your very specific timeline, but also, because it's so nerdy that we're both like, and then this is what happened, but then also see parts of you that maybe they wouldn't have seen in other places. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Woman Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Woman Power Podcast and Woman Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.